Until now, as a matter of fact, until 2 weeks ago, right, the popular narrative was you need a lot of compute to train, but you don't need so much compute to inference. Hence, the
Yeah.
gap is huge, right?
Mm.
But I think with the O1, what has happened is one of the things is that now, even to inference, you need a fair degree of compute, right? Because
Yeah.
if you want that whole reasoning to happen, right, I can do it, but I will need more in terms
Mm.
of time, in terms of compute. So the gap that people always talked about in terms of training versus inference in terms of compute, now some of it has gone bad because O1 requires inference time compute also is fairly high,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think this is a very, very evolving field where if you're saying something today, tomorrow morning things can change, right? And
Yeah.
that's the whole fun of living in these times as well,
True.
right?
Absolutely. But also, like, okay, I'm gonna make a statement that I don't 100% agree with, but
So,
I'm not worry too much about training cost. You know what I mean? Because it's a one-time thing. I mean, you do it. Maybe you train a model for like 6 months or whatever. You have a model, right? Like I think the problem here is the inference cost, right? Like if even before O1, right? Like it is a problem that you know you are gonna be serving to millions of users, so you do need to have like enough compute to be able to support that, right? Even if you're not training your models. So it is, and as we are realizing now that maybe we should, right, like increase in inference bandwidth. It's gonna come into play.
interesting, right? I mean, one of the things that I talk, so I do a lot of these workshops for CXOs and boards, right?
Hmm,
Now, what you just mentioned means that if the inference compute is going up, which means that the cost is going up,
hmm,
which means you need to charge more to your users, which means the value prop that you are bringing to the user needs to be that much more skiller and stronger,
yeah.
right? One of the things that we have seen, right, and somebody recently said this in the that in last 18 months we have seen a lot of toy use cases come up,
Hmm,
which are good to have play with and all of that stuff. A lot of startups also came around it, right? But these are not necessarily be the ones which are going to survive because the value prop is not strong enough that your customer is going to pay, and then economically it doesn't remain viable at all to sustain, right?
hmm,
And one needs to look at AI while a great technology, and absolutely the point you also initially mentioned, right? Can you even build a solution without AI? Your life is going to be far more easy, right?
sure.
I mean, we all have been there. Right?
Hmm,
Those are much simpler systems, deterministic systems, easy to build and all that. But even
hmm,
if you have to bring in AI, right,
hmm,
your value prop has to be really so strong, right, that the
hmm,
customer pays heavily. In terms of when I say heavily, it's not per customer, but the number of customers who are paying us are so large, right,
hmm,
which is typically the YC thing that they say, right? Build something that the customer wants. Two, they will pay for it, and two, they will refer it, the network effect, right?
hmm,
Which means a large number of startups that are building these toy use cases,
hmm.
which look good, but then are economically not going to be sustainable, right? And a lot of them are going to face tougher times going ahead. Is that another way to kind of extend what you just said?
Partly, I'm and, special cases, if they're useful, right? And surely maybe there is a service which is useful, but it's too expensive today, right? In terms of using LLMs, in terms of using AI, I think you know that as there are gonna be cheaper alternatives, there is gonna be cheaper AI, right? Like there is gonna be expensive general purpose, everything can do AI, and there's gonna be AI for this specific
Hmm.
problem. So either as the costs are increasing, right? Like so, it's either you you go out of the business, or you try somehow reduce this cost, right? Like so you still have like a viable business model. And I do think that smaller models models requiring lesser compute can be of like great help here. So I can imagine a world where there are different types of AIs, right? I don't have like a single AI that is doing everything, right? So I go to OpenAI and I buy their model. It's expensive. It can do some really cool things, let's say, right? So it can do a reasonably hard task, but maybe I have a use case that does not require as hard, that's not that difficult a task, and I can, I would be look out for like smaller AIs, right? The analogy that comes to my mind is like, these databases
Mm.
that need like Redshift, or maybe I can, put this in MySQL, or maybe on my laptop I can have a SQLite, and like, maybe I have Excel, right? Like, so it that sort of, a world I can imagine. I don't know how it will really play out again with that caveat, but I can